Hi, we're group 15, and for our ethics and professional practice final project, we researched entertainment media and the image of architects and interior designers in popular culture.
Our research topic is as follows. Research broadly for context how entertainment media has shaped the image of architects and interior designers in popular culture. Read specifically Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, or you can watch the 1949 movie. Identify 4 or 5 characters, one for each team member, a moral dilemma they faced, and how they resolved the dilemma. Interview at least one professional for ways pop culture images of design professionals have impacted his or her career.
So the film The Fountainhead is directed by King Vidor and written by novelist Ayn Rand, unfolds the sometimes harsh realities that come with being a professional in the design industry. The Fountainhead specifically explores the professional career of Howard Roark, an architect who is not motivated by compensation, but rather values being true to himself and his approach to architecture.
So like Caroline mentioned, Howard Roark is the protagonist of the 1949 film The Fountainhead. After getting expelled from school for not conforming to traditional approaches to architecture, Roark ventures off into the world hoping to maintain his integrity and individualism as an architect. Roark's constant moral dilemma is whether or not he is willing to compromise his integrity for the sake of his career. As the film progresses, we watch as Roark never once jeopardizes his moral integrity, which leads to an uphill battle and constant struggle as he tries to establish himself as an architect. Roark's battle represents the struggle between individualism and collectivism.
So another character in The Fountainhead is Dominique Franken, and she is an unconventional and slightly rebellious architectural columnist for Manhattan's newspaper, The Banner. Despite her refusal to love or be loved by anyone, Miss Franken unknowingly finds herself infatuated with a man on her father's construction site, who ends up being none other than the film's protagonist, Howard Roark. Outside of their romantic relationship with one another, Dominique Franken is seen continuously voicing her support for Howard Roark's willingness to defy social conformity and his commitment to both himself and his work as an architect. An example of this can be seen when Miss Franken resigns from her position at the newspaper as a form of retaliation against the Banner's attempt to diminish Howard Roark's radical design for the Enright House, even before knowing he was the man she had fallen in love with.
Peter Keating began his journey as an architect with Howard Roark, but their values eventually took them on very different paths. In fact, Keating is the total opposite of Roark, whereas he would rather conform to the mainstream design everybody likes than be original and authentic. He was very ambitious, but always seek the approval of others, even if it meant sacrificing what and who he loves. The moral dilemma that Peter Keating faced was that he had selfish motives for improving his career and social status. He slowly made his way to a high position in the firm by lying to and manipulating people. He even goes as far as to using Roark's original design as his own. In the end, his hunger for social approval left him in an unhappy marriage and career.
Gail Wynand represents the power held by popular media in the industry of design and construction and its professionals. He is a media tycoon who manipulates a susceptible society through his newspaper, The Banner. Although controlling a large contingent of the public opinion, he's also vulnerable to public opinion and ultimately is corrupted by it. Unlike Roark, who never compromises his integral individualism, no matter how difficult his life becomes as a result, Wynand succumbs to collectivism. When he initially meets Roark, Wynand is inspired by his fierce individualism, so much so that Wynand converts his public pandering tabloid into independent and free-thinking journalism. Through his newspaper, Wynand produces the only articles defending Roark throughout his trial, directly challenging and contradicting the general public as well as several powerful institutions. However, when these institutions turn their attention towards Wynand and his paper as a result, his paper is boycotted. Wynand's readership abandons him, and he quickly discovers that he was never truly in control of the people, but rather the people were also in control of him. He inevitably bends to the collective will, producing sensationalist articles critical of Roark, his own friend, in order to win back the public's favor.
Ellsworth Toohey is the antagonist of the film and continually tries to ruin the career of Howard Roark. Toohey believes that traditional architecture should not be spoiled by the modernist view. At the personal level, he acquires a group of the followers who blindly obeys his every command through the newspaper column. That is why in the Bannon, Tuhees does not present moral values throughout the film, as he tries to ruin the career of hard work. Tuhees convinces his followers to give up the thing most important in their life, their values.
Before our interview with a professional in the industry, we contacted Steve Erickson, a principal at Saba, an architecture firm based in Seattle. To start off, we asked Erickson if popular media had any impact on his choice to become a professional designer. He couldn't recall any media influencing his choice. However, he did begin noticing architects reflected in the media following his choice to pursue architecture. Rather, Erickson's interest in design was piqued at a young age upon discovering a scale model built by an uncle of his who was an architect.
The next question that we asked Erickson was, do you ever see the other professions/professionals in the design and construction industry in popular media? How accurately do you believe they are represented? And he replied, over the last decade, a lot of renovation shows have shown up on various cable stations such as HGTV that present designers with unspecified credentials creating beautiful remodeled homes virtually overnight with zero input from the homeowners. These shows have definitely created an unrealistic picture of how the design and construction process actually works. There's a lot of collaboration, time, and money spent that is not represented in these shows. The role of a licensed architect is seldom, if ever, referenced. This Old House, the grandfather of the genre, does give a more realistic picture of what is involved.
When we asked Steve if clients oftentimes have preconceived ideas about who designers are and what they do, and if so, do these notions interfere with relationships with said clients? He responded by saying that the general public as a whole does not have a good sense of what architects do. He goes on to say that many people confuse architects with engineers and think that their main task is to draw up plans for only one option that the client wants. He says there is another smaller group of people that expect the architect to be a narrow-minded professional who doesn't necessarily take into consideration the needs and wants of the client.
The next question we asked was, have you read Ayn Rand's the novel The Fountainhead or seen its film adaptation? If so, do you feel their representation of the industry and its professionals is accurate? He replied, I have both read the book and seen the film. The book was written at a time when architecture was integral to artistic and social engineering theories that were in vogue. Many people, especially architects, believe that the artistic and social movements like futurism, functionalism, and socialism that arose in Europe during the first decades of the 20th century could help shape society. Ayn Rand's novel riffed on these ideas and used the role of an architect's vision to represent her central theme that the individualism is paramount. Her novel caught the imagination of the popular public and did cement an image of the heroic architect in the minds of many people for some time after its publication.
The next question we asked Erickson was, do you believe hard work is an accurate representation of architects? Is fierce independence, a belief in innovative design, and austerity and refusal to conform to dominate tends an accurate representation of architects? And he replied, work's characterization may be representative of select marquee architects. Frank Lloyd Wright, Graves and Gary were some of the examples that he gave, but it is not an accurate representation of how architects function. Large-scale work, as represented by Works Housing Project, is by necessity a more collaborative effort than represented in the novel. Ultimately, there are not enough clients to support nothing but individualistic design work, and built architecture continues to follow general design trends. When I was in college, postmodernism was in vogue, and most design students were much more aligned with Peter Keating's design solutions than they were with Howard Roark. Keep in mind that 95% of what is actually built is done without the use of an architect.
Next, we asked Erickson if, similar to the film, the news or popular media have influence over the decisions made by design professionals. His response was that today's written architectural criticism is not as popularly shared as today as it was in the time that The Fountainhead was published. Rather than reading about it in trade magazines or weekend newspapers, people, including architects, click on links to cool computer-generated renderings or photos of technologically crazy projects. Steve does not think that there is a lot of reading about the design today. Consequently, the popular response online is probably more impactful than ever before, but the structured media's influence is diminishing. Today's trends seem to be more reflective of the idea that anything is possible because of the computer-generated technical support, and there doesn't seem to me to be specific theoretical dogma. So here are a few resources that we use, the first being the film itself, The Fountainhead, and the second being the interview that we conducted with Steve Erickson. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.